I'm proud of all my friends, 'cause life ain't always easy, but they keep holding on. I'm proud of all my friends, 'cause they keep believing that the best is yet to come.
Greetings, friends. I'm Paula Gordon. Finally and grudgingly, a majority of Americans are beginning to address our most profound and destructive failures as a nation and as a people, slavery and genocide. After 15 years of research and writing, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Isabel Wilkerson published The Warmth of Other Suns. In it, Ms. Wilkerson brings to life the epic Black migration from the Jim Crow South. They left with the hope of escaping the racism and terror of the former Confederacy. One telling example:
there were actually in courtrooms, there was a black Bible and a white Bible. So if a black person was giving testimony, they had to go out and get the black Bible for that person. If it were a white person getting up to give testimony, we've got to find the white Bible for that person. Heaven forbid they both put their hands on and testify to God on the same Bible.
And there is the more horrific side, which continues to this day. For 40 years in America, on average, 4 people were burned alive or hung every week. On and on and on and on.
Every 3.5 days.
That's so beyond appalling, there are no words for it. Unfortunately, racism was not confined to Dixie, nor did it end with Jim Crow. We recorded this conversation with Ms. Wilkerson almost exactly 10 years ago. During that decade, the latent racism in America has come out of the closet, encouraged and sustained by Donald Trump and the Republican Party. If America is ever to meet its stated commitment to liberty and justice for all, that justice must be applied equally to every person. People are not born racist. They learn it. That learning is based on false narratives and assumptions. The stories Ms. Wilkerson has crafted about the Great Migration, the attempt by millions of black people to escape the horrors of Jim Crow in the South and its northern and western equivalents, are a powerful antidote to the ignorance and prejudice and destructiveness of racism. She tells us about it with grace and humor. Isabel Wilkerson, when I think about our history and our present and where it's taking us, I often take my inspiration from the fishes. Fishes don't know that they're in water. Fish have no idea that, it just is. It's context that is so important to sustaining life, to getting on. Is the context what drove you to this wonderful work you've done?
Well, it's interesting you would mention the fishes because I thought of that analogy while I was beginning to work on this book. And that is that when you're in the water, you can't see much beyond where you are. And that is one reason why this massive movement of 6 million people out of the South kind of went unnoticed, because it was so very close and so very obvious that you almost didn't see it for what it was. And this is a migration of 6 million people out of the South that occurred over 55 years of time. Much of the 20th century was about this great migration, which changed the North and the South. And it was one of the greatest underreported stories of the 20th century. It was happening right under our noses, and people didn't connect the dots. And here, this book and this work gives us a chance to look at it in a way we hadn't looked at it before. So I'm just thrilled that you make that analogy.
There is a sense that if we didn't notice this, what else are we missing?
Well, but that's also one of the challenges in American history. There are whole groups of people, blacks being high on the list, that essentially got written out of history forever. And we are now just beginning to go back and find some of these things. You blessedly were able to deal with some of the real people. We didn't have to just deal with the archives, which is extraordinarily fortunate. As much as anything, because I think of Cornel West and Ralph Ellison, the role of black people in the character of America is so central and is so defining of who and what America is, whether people like it or not, that to have just blanked that out is A, mistake, and B, a serious loss to what we know about ourselves, how we see ourselves, and how we see our, really is more, probably most importantly, how we see our futures.
Well, one of the goals of this book was to try to restore to its rightful place in history this massive movement of people. Essentially, there were almost 1 million people, or about 1 million people leaving per decade in this migration. And this is the story of 3 of those people who left, and also the backstory of other people who were part of this, famous and not so famous. And so it's just filled with all kinds of stories that help fill in the blanks of history of this massive movement, which was in some ways a bridge between Jim Crow, the introduction of Jim Crow in the South, and the Civil Rights Movement.
I do want to enhance what Bill just said. There were people doing the work for the last 40 years. I have the good fortune to have known Herbert Gutman, who led what became known as the New Social History. And they were beginning to look at people who came from Ireland, individuals, the lower class, people who, African Americans. Herb Gutman was known for his work to say the African American family was very strong during slavery. We just didn't want anybody to know that. And besides, there was slavery. So you didn't come. You were not born. How did Athena come full?
Spring full from the head of.
From the head of Zeus. You've had also the benefit of 40 years of people doing this social history, which Mary Catherine Bateson says has become history.
Well, it actually goes even further than that, because you're going back to World War I, where the economists and the sociologists were looking at this. They were the first ones to look at it because there were this massive swell of people, and they wanted to understand what was going on. A lot of it had to do with a kind of reluctant and alarmist view, actually, at the time that they were arriving. And so a lot of my work meant going back to those original works that were done at the time to be able to recreate that era so that the reader would be able to feel what it was like to live in those circumstances, both blacks and whites. I think that both sides were hurt by Jim Crow because it meant that people who otherwise might have been the best of friends, as my mother mentioned to me about one of her mothers, a woman that my grandmother worked for.
Oh,
she just said yes, and she said they got along so well whenever the woman would come by to pick up the laundry or whatever they were doing, and she said they just got along so well they would have been the best of friends, but there were limits as to what kind of relationship any white person could have with any black person during that era.
This was in Rome, Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Rome, Georgia, around the Depression.
Well, this is also Dr. King.
Yeah.
You know, if until everyone's free, nobody's free.
The work of which you speak is the kind of work that a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter would do. This is Isabel Wilkerson. We'll be back in just a moment for a great deal more. Be with us.